at Queen Street United Methodist Church. Sometimes it doesn't feel like I'm so retired, like I got to preach today, but welcome to our Wesley Bible study, and hopefully the class can survive the class, and the congregation can survive my preaching one more Sunday. But we'll see how it goes. Welcome, and glad to have so many of you online. Please feel free to respond to the class. If you have subscribed to Queen Street, I think you can leave a message for me. There are some live chat things going on. I can't respond to them as I'm going through the class because I can't think of two things at once. But I just want you to know that we welcome you and look for your input. There we go. Today we're going to do Joshua 22. Now, Joshua 22 is very long compared to other chapters. And there are a couple of issues that are going on in Joshua 22, but they are informative for some of the attitudes that we have today. But let's take a look at 22. So what's happened is that ostensibly the invasion of Canaan is over. And if you'll recall, there were several tribes that were being settled on the east side of the Jordan. And Joshua's fear and Moses' fear, way back when, was that these tribes would settle in on the east side of the Jordan and consider themselves separate from the rest of the nation, and that they wouldn't participate in the invasion of Canaan.
When they say the West Bank,
Yeah,
is that the West Bank of the Jordan?
of the Jordan.
Okay, so it's
Yep.
right there. Okay.
Yep, right there. Okay, so anyway, you have like the half tribe of Manasseh, you have Reuben and the Gadites.
What
and,
does that half tribe mean?
Yeah, half tribe. Half tribe, you have that tribe settled on the east bank and on the west bank of the Jordan. So
yes.
it transcends the Jordan, okay? We might call it Transjordan, I don't know. But anyway,
I saw,
Yeah.
and it's been a long time, and I've been out a long time, but I saw that one of God's requests was, when I give you this land, you have this land, but until the tribes on the east
right,
are finished
on the west.
on the west are fighting for their land,
Yeah.
you're supposed to come over and help them.
Not only that, yes, that's exactly right. Not only are they supposed to help them, they are supposed to be in the vanguard of the invasion. So these
Right.
tribes that are settled on the east bank of the Jordan, in order to demonstrate their loyalty, when the invasion of Canaan takes place, they're supposed to be on the front line. And why are they on the front line? Because if on the back of the line, they might sneak back across the Jordan. So they wanted to make sure that the whole army was behind these guys when they go forward. Okay?
Makes sense.
Okay, so there you go. So anyway, they did go forward, and they were part of the whole invasion, and Joshua was very grateful for their contribution. Evidently, they did what they said they were going to do, so Joshua says this: Then Joshua summoned the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and said to them, You have observed all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, and have obeyed me in all that I have commanded you. You have not forsaken your kindred these many days down to this day, but have been careful to keep the charge of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God has given rest to your kindred, as he promised them. Therefore turn and go to your tents in the land where your possession lies, where Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. Take care to observe the commandment and instruction that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, to keep his commandments, and to hold fast to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. So Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents, which is interesting. Why would they go to their tents if they have cities that they've occupied? I'm just saying. Okay. Now, to the one half tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given a possession in Bashan, but to the other half, Joshua had given possessions beside their fellow Israelites in the land west of the Jordan. And when Joshua sent them away to their tents and blessed them, he said, Go back to your tents with much wealth, and with very much livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, and iron, and with great quantity of clothing. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your kindred. So the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh returned home, parting from the Israelites at Shiloh. Remember now, the tent of the tabernacle with the altar is in Shiloh. This is a big deal, okay? Which is in the land of Canaan. Go to the land of Gilead, their own land, of which they had taken possession by command of the Lord through Moses. Okay, you've all heard there is a balm in Gilead. Okay, well, there might be more than one kind, so let's look into it. A memorial altar east of the Jordan. When they came to the region near the Jordan that lies in the land of Canaan, the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by the Jordan, an altar of great size. Okay. The Israelites heard that the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh had built an altar opposite the land of Canaan in the region near the Jordan across from the Israelites, and when the people of Israel heard of it, the whole assembly of the Israelites gathered at Shiloh to make war against them. Why? What's going on? Okay. This is on the east side of the Jordan, tribe of Manasseh, okay, and they built this humongous altar. Now remember, the tabernacle of the Lord is in Shiloh, and these guys have built an altar on the east bank of the Jordan. So what's going on? Then the Israelites sent the priest Phinehas, son of Eleazar, to the Reubenites. Now this is on the Aaronic line. To the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe Manasseh in the land of Gilead, and with them 10 chiefs from one from each of the tribal families of Israel, every one of them the head of a family among the clans of Israel. They came to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead, and they said to them, "Thus says the whole congregation of the Lord, what is this treachery that you have committed against the God of Israel in turning away today from following the Lord by building yourselves an altar today in rebellion against the Lord?" What do they suspect is going on? Why are they upset?
Turning away from God. They don't think that they're continuing to worship God.
Right. Yeah. They think that these guys are setting up their own religion. It might be the same religion, okay? Might be the same religion, but it's not centered in Shiloh.
I guess that's before they met Baptist, right?
What they're afraid of is that these are Protestants. And they're not showing their allegiance to Rome. Okay? That's the same controversy. Same controversy. You're building your own altar. What's going on here? Okay? So, all right. And why is everybody upset with this movement? Okay? By building yourself. Okay. Have we not had enough of this, of the sin of Peor, from which even yet we have not cleansed ourselves, and for which a plague came upon the congregation of the Lord, that you must turn away from following the Lord? If you rebel against the Lord today, he will be angry with the whole congregation of Israel tomorrow. But now, if your land is unclean, cross over into the Lord's land, where the Lord's tabernacle now stands, and take for yourselves a possession among us. Only do not rebel against the Lord or rebel against us by building yourselves an altar other than the altar of the Lord our God. Did not Achan, son of Zerah, break faith in the matter of the devoted things, and wrath fell upon all the congregation of Israel, and he did not perish alone for his iniquity. Okay, so what are they afraid of? They're afraid that if their religion is fragmented, that God is going to be upset with the whole congregation for allowing it to be fragmented. So if these guys are allowed to secede, basically, then the whole nation is going to be threatened with collapse, that the whole nation is going to be punished for allowing this secession. So they send in the high priest. Remember we talked about the Levites? Okay, these are Levitical priests, and they are, as I mentioned before, these are the enforcers. So while there's a delegation that includes the heads of the families of the different tribes, of 10 tribes, that come in and challenge these eastern tribes, the one in charge of that delegation is the high priest. All right, so they're angry and they're afraid because this separatist movement could destroy the nation in the eyes of God. At least God would punish the whole nation for this act. So that's why they're ready to make war against these guys. Okay? Now, which is interesting because anytime there had been somebody who was apostate, okay, God would punish the whole group, but he left it most of the time, not always, he left it to the people themselves to enforce the reestablishment of God's law. So you had the Levites went out, remember after one apostasy, the Levites went out and they killed like, you know, a vast number of their own people, even their own families, as a way of bringing everybody back into the, you know, the religion. And it's in this instance, there's something to be aware of, and that is that God did not send the delegation. God didn't say to Joshua, look what's going on over there, put together a delegation and get out there and punish these people. Okay? God did not send them. They went of their own volition, and they went because they believed that something was going on over there.
So did Joshua send them?
No. Not at the behest of the Lord. Joshua might have sent them, but it doesn't say that Joshua did.
Right.
Okay? And it certainly doesn't say that God sent them.
Well, if it was the same religion,
Yeah.
wouldn't God know that?
But it wouldn't be the same religion because they wouldn't put themselves under the authority of the priesthood in Shiloh.
Okay, so they just, okay.
Okay? When you have a separatist movement within religions, okay, when you have a separatist movement within religions, the clergy are the ones who do everything they can to stop it. Now, that doesn't mean that every separatist movement is a good one. Okay? Sometimes the clergy needs to stop it. But, you know, generally speaking, what the thing that motivates most religions to stop separatist movements is their loss of control. It's their loss of control, I think, in most cases transcends differences in theology or doctrine. The reaction is very often much worse than the separatist movement. Look at the Spanish Inquisition or the 100 Years' War that tore Europe apart over Catholic Protestant. It's one of the reasons why we have so many European descendants here in this country, is that people were getting away from the 100 Years' War, religious war that was going on in Europe. And who who was instigating this most of the time? Most of the time it was the clergy that was putting people against each other. But it had more to do with control than it had to do with doctrine. Okay? All right. So, what's the response? They've been accused. Okay? Then the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh said in answer to the heads of the families of Israel, the Lord, the God of gods, the Lord God of gods, he knows, and let Israel itself know. If it was a rebellion or in breach of faith toward the Lord, do not spare us today. for building an altar to turn away from following the Lord, or if we did so to offer burnt offerings or grain offerings or offerings of well-being on it, may the Lord himself take vengeance. No. We did it from fear that in time to come, your children might say to our children, what have you to do with the Lord, the God of Israel? For the Lord has made the Jordan a boundary between us, and you Reubenites and Gadites, have no portion in the Lord. So your children might make our children cease to worship the Lord. Therefore, we said, let us now build an altar, not for burnt offering nor for sacrifice, but to be a witness between us and you, and between the generations after us, that we do perform the service of the Lord in his presence with our burnt offerings and sacrifices and offerings of well-being, so that your children may never say to our children in time to come, you have no portion in the Lord. And we thought, if this should be said to us or to our descendants in time to come, we could say, look at this copy of the altar of the Lord our ancestors made, not for burnt offering, not for sacrifice, but to be a witness between us and you. Far be it from us that we should rebel against the Lord and turn away this day from following the Lord by building an altar for burnt offering, grain offering, or sacrifice, other than the altar of the Lord, the altar of the Lord, our God, that stands before his tabernacle. So what they have built is an altar, but the function of it is a monument. It's not going to be used for sacrifices, but it's a monument. And it's a reminder to their own generations that they are tied to this worship of the Lord, okay? But it's also a reminder to the people on the west bank of the Jordan that you can't disenfranchise us just because we're on the other side of the river. Because rivers typically are boundaries between countries, between states, and all of that. Okay? So, what are we looking at here?
It looks to me like the people of Gad and they're intuitive. They are already seeing the hearts of the people on the other side.
Well, yeah, and they know that they weren't trusted to begin with because they put them in the vanguard of the attack.
Right.
Okay? So, so if this generation that knows them puts them in the vanguard of the attack, what are their kids going to be like? Because you know how these things get watered down after a number of generations. Okay? All right, here's an issue too. They don't have a national flag. They don't have a national symbol.
This is Israel.
Yeah, Israel doesn't have a national symbol. They got all these tribes, but they don't have a national symbol. What they have is a tabernacle in Shiloh, which is movable. Okay? So they don't have something that's really well established to identify them as a nation. So, like, I got an American flag in my yard, so everybody knows I feel like I'm an American, okay? I see flags sometimes in other people's yards that I wonder whether or not they're American, okay? But, and you see these demonstrations out in the field, all these people claiming that they want to be in this country, but they're flying somebody else's flag, and I'm thinking, that, you know, maybe they're not that loyal.
Yeah.
So they don't have a national symbol. So what these tribes are saying is, look, the altar, we're going to make the altar our national symbol. So when you see an altar like this, and it's a monument, it's not an altar, we're not going to function it like an altar, but it's big, and it's something that everybody can see, and it's a reminder that we're part of this greater thing, okay? But they don't have something that is a greater thing that you can put in each tribe. So these guys are trying to solve that problem. And it's easy to misinterpret it because they just happen to pick a thing that could be used for the wrong reason.
But people before them had built altars to honor God.
Yeah.
So I still think we go back to the people that are coming over and accusing them. as being the guilty party.
Well, they are kind of, but there's, I mean, the realization here is that they need some kind of national identity.
But didn't they have that identity to the community or people around them because God has been with them and led them in battle?
Good for you, yes, okay? But, okay, we're moving into another era. Before this, they were all moving together. They've all got a central thing they've got to do. They've got to drive out the Canaanites, kill them all, take their stuff, okay? And so this is a central national purpose that they've all got. And as they've got a central focus, it's not hard for them to see themselves as a nation, sort of, on the move, okay? Now they're not on the move. Now they're divvied up into tribes. So we ran into this. This is part of our history. We had 13 colonies that did not see themselves as part of a nation. They saw each one of them as a separate colony. And when we did become a nation, we didn't start off with the Constitution. We started out with Articles of Confederation. And the Articles of Confederation said that each one of these states is sovereign. More sovereign than a central government. And they didn't give the central government enough power to be a central government. So that's when we migrated into the Constitution, which subordinated states to the federal government. And then we had a war to decide whether or not the states were actually subordinate to the federal government. Okay? Now, this kind of stuff still goes on. If you take a look at what's going on in Canada right now, okay? Canada is under on Articles of Confederation. Each one of their provinces is sovereign. Okay? They have a central government, and the central government, from the standpoint of the Western provinces, is exceeding its authority as a central government when it comes to managing things in the provinces. The provinces in the western part of the state of Canada are now thinking of seceding from Canada, because they feel themselves abused by the central government. But they are still under Articles of Confederation. It's not the same thing as a central constitution like we have. So it's a possibility. Yeah.
Right now, current time, do the Israelites have any kind of tribe at all anymore? No. That was...
Yeah, they got so mixed up in the diaspora that, you know,
Okay.
like my name is Levin, so I'm like from the tribe of Levi. Don't look at me to enforce anything, okay? But there's no telling. There's really no telling where, you know, my generations came from, except for there's a name legacy, but that doesn't mean really anything by now. Nobody looks at me as being a Levite, okay? They don't even look at me as being Jewish, because my mother wasn't Jewish, so, you know, there you go. But
Was your father Jewish?
my grandfather was Jewish,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah. And he married a Catholic, so guess what?
Okay.
We became Protestants. Split the difference.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Started out with Seventh-day Adventists, so it was close, you know. But anyway, that's a bit of family history. But anyway, you know, and both of my grandparents got kicked out of their respective families. You know, my grandmother was Irish Catholic. She was first generation American. Okay, married a Jewish kid. They kicked her out of the family. And then my grandfather, they had a funeral for him, and kicked him out of the family. And the only side that actually reconciled was the Jewish side. The Catholic side never did. So, go figure. There goes Grace. Anyway. So anyway, they've explained this, and let's see what the response is. If I can get the page turn. There we go. When the priest Phinehas and the chiefs of the congregation and the heads of the families of Israel who were with him heard the words that the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the Manassites spoke, they were satisfied. The priest Phinehas son of Eleazar, said to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the Manassites, "Today we know that the Lord is among us because you have not committed this treachery against the Lord. Now you have saved the Israelites from the hand of the Lord." Then the priest Phinehas, son of Eleazar, and the chiefs returned from the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the land of Gilead to the land of Canaan to the Israelites, and brought back word to them. The report pleased the Israelites, and the Israelites blessed God and spoke no more of making war against them to destroy the land where the Reubenites and the Gadites were settled. So there will be no bomb in Gilead, okay? The Reubenites and the Gadites called the altar witness, for they said, "It is a witness between us that the Lord is God." Okay. I think it is monumental that they came to this decision. And it's one of the reasons when you see people going around and tearing down monuments, then the story is lost. And the story isn't always a good one, but you don't want it lost. Okay? You don't want it lost. You want people to be able to say, well, why is, here's a guy who hated his country and they got a statue of him. Why did he hate the country? Why did the country hate him? Why did they go to war with each other? Why were so many people killed? Okay? Good for us to ask those questions so we don't do it again. Important for us to do that. Nations that tried to destroy their history don't end up well because they don't create good ones. That's one of the things that I think is important for us to realize today, because today this country is facing a group of people who are traditionally, we would call them anarchists, and their primary focus is to destroy the current order of things, with the expectation that their generation would know so much better how to create a new one. Okay? But if they are going to create a new one and they haven't taken into account, or they've erased what went on before, they don't know what they're doing. They just don't know what they're doing. And most of the time, if you get an anarchist who overthrows whatever the present order is, the order that put in its place is deadly.
Has Fort Bragg been changed back to Fort Bragg?
It has been changed back to Fort Bragg, but not for Braxton Bragg. It's not named after the general. It's named after a guy who got a Congressional Medal of Honor, whose name was Bragg.
Okay.
Okay, and they've done that with a number of forts. They've renamed them back to the original name, but not for the original Confederate general. How about that?
Yeah,
Good thing we have so many heroes with similar names.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so, but that's the way it's going. But I thought this was really interesting because you can see how it's so easy to get into a conflict over a misunderstanding. Okay? Or more than that, it's so easy to get into a conflict because of a misrepresentation. Because someone wants a conflict and they misrepresent what somebody else is doing or their motives. Okay? And they use that as an excuse to make war on them. Okay? But let me tell you something. Anytime somebody does this because of a religious motive, that war is going to be horrible. It's going to be absolutely horrible.
Just like what we got going on in Israel now.
Well, yes, that's exactly right. It's horrible. And we look back at our own Civil War. We lost more people in our Civil War than we have in any other wars
500,000.
altogether. Okay? So it was horrible. Okay? But the horror had more to do with the way things were fought on the battlefield than it did with other stuff. Now, granted, both sides treated prisoners of war horribly. But when it came to the population itself, there were atrocities, to be sure. Absolutely. I'm not saying there were not atrocities. There were atrocities. And they were committed on both sides. Okay? But it's not like the 100 Years' War, where the objective was to commit atrocities. Okay? Or what was going with Hamas, where the objective is to commit atrocities. or what's going on now in Ukraine, where the Russians' objective is to commit atrocities. Okay? You start seeing that sort of thing. And, you know, I just saw a video clip of Putin standing in a Russian Orthodox church blessing himself. I thought, nice going, you know?
Wow.
So he is using, believe me, there is a real religious difference between the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Russian Orthodox Church. Theologically the same, politically, bang. Okay? And if you go to the Russian Orthodox Church today, I don't think you'd find much objection to what's going on in Ukraine.
Oh, there's not, our son, Chris, his wife, her stepmother is from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes home and stays 3 or 4 months at a time. Her father is like 101 or something, and so I asked my daughter-in-law a couple of weeks ago what she thought, what Elena, which is her stepmother, thought of the war and Putin. And she said, she thinks Putin is great.
Yes.
Putin is one?
Great.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. You have to, yeah.
And I'm thinking, she's married to an American. She lives here 3/4 of the year. But yet she thinks Putin is great.
Yes, it is very much a cultural thing for the Russians to do exactly what they're doing. It's part of it's ingrained in them. It's a culture kind of thing. And it's really it's one of the reasons why these negotiations are going to be so very, very, very hard, because you're not dealing with the objective things of what's going on the battlefield. You're dealing with cultures and mindsets and self-justifications, and there are some things that are just really, really difficult to negotiate out of. We found that out in World War II, in trying to deal with the Nazis and the Japanese. You know, sometimes these things just have to play out to the end, and I hope to God that's not the case here. But you know, there are some people war is their national sport. This is what they do. Okay. Anyway, God bless you. Hope that you all are blessed. Some of the people who are sending in chats are interesting, but you know, I'm not going to respond. Talk to you later.
Thank you.